4 disturbing true stories that will haunt your thoughts. Basements are supposed to be boring, safe places. They hold laundry piles, holiday decorations, boxes you promise yourself you'll sort one weekend. For me, and for the people I'm about to tell you about, those rooms stopped being mundane and became the place where the line between ordinary life and something terrifying blurred. You'll hear a man nearly pulled into the dark, a kid who filmed a face pressed against a window, a foam football that rolled out from nowhere, and a childhood moment that decoded into a family secret years later. These are all true, as far as the narrators remember them, and none of them end neatly. Keep that in mind as you listen. I was 24 and proud of my new house. It wasn't much, an old place on a quiet street, but it was mine. I could paint the walls whatever color I wanted. I could finally stop renting and start pretending I had my life together. The basement was small, a single flight down from the laundry room, the kind of space where the water heater hummed and boxes leaned against the cinder block wall, labeled in shaky Sharpie. Books, old clothes, Christmas. I did laundry down there, usually on a Sunday afternoon. Headphones in, playlist on low. The light switch by the top of the stairs felt reassuring. Flip it, and the room opened up in that yellow, cheap bulb glow. That afternoon, the laundry basket was full. I had just started the washer when I heard something at the bottom of the stairs. A shuffle, like someone moving boxes. I told myself it was the cat, Rocky, who liked to nap on a pile of sweaters. I told myself a lot of things that day. I turned the light on, and the basement looked the same. Boxes, a folding table, the dryer humming. But then, in the far corner under the low bulb, something moved that shouldn't have been there. It was a shape, crouched low, like somebody trying not to be seen. In the light it was a man, clothing dark, face blurred by shadow. He was literally inside my basement. At first I froze, the classic idiot move. I thought maybe the neighbor's kid had come in to use the bathroom. My mouth tasted like laundry detergent and panic. I called out, "Hey, hey, what are you doing?" No answer. He didn't move to stand up. Something about the way he was crouched made me instinctively back up toward the stairs. I fumbled the switch with my toe because I wanted the light up top, the safe brightness that meant I could be seen by the street. The bulb went dark. The power flickered and died like someone had reached up and closed a lid on the room. When the light went out, time compressed. My vision tunneled to a ring of darkness and the small pool of shadow on the concrete where I'd last seen him. I started for the stairs. My foot hit the first step and then there was pressure at my ankle. It grabbed me. I don't know how else to say it. The feeling of being yanked backward by something that had my leg. I scrambled, panic turning my hands useless. And the basement air felt colder somehow, thick with the smell of dust and the metallic tang of fear. He was pulling me down. I kicked. I remember the sound of denim scraping on concrete, the thud of my heart like a fist against my ribs. I clawed at the stair rail with both hands and somehow hauled my weight up. I reached the top and slammed the door. For a second I thought I'd made it. Then the door started shaking like someone was trying to get through. Heavy, methodical slamming hammered the wood. It was not fumbling. It was violent and precise. I pressed my back to the door and shouted for anyone in the house, adrenaline boiling so hot I could barely feel anything but the possibility of being dragged back down. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, listening to him batter the door. The sound of fists on wood left a ringing in my teeth that didn't stop for days. I called 911. The operator's voice was calm and pinched through a survival haze. "Stay in place, wait for officers," and I obeyed like some sheepish creature wanting nothing more than to vanish. Police arrived, lights painting the yard red and blue, boots on the porch, flashlights cutting into the dark like knives. They opened the basement door carefully, called for anyone inside, found nothing but a forced basement window. The glass had been smashed inward, the dirt on the inside window ledge scuffed as though someone had climbed in. Nothing of mine was missing. There was no sign of blood. There was no sign of motive. The only thing obvious was how close it had come. I moved out of that house months later. I told myself I was being practical, new job, new place. But the truth is, you cannot pretend a hand didn't grip your ankle and that later corrode into conjecture. Sometimes at night, I'd wake up, convinced I could hear footsteps downstairs, and I'd lie there waiting for the muffled sound of someone searching through boxes. People asked if I was overreacting. They told me it could have been a squatter, a homeless person trying to find warmth, a drifter. I don't know. What I do know is the way the door shook, the way the darkness felt like a second person, and the image that kept returning to me, the forced window, the dirt on the inside sill, like a footprint of some intent I never saw finish. If these kinds of basement stories grip you like they did me, hit like and stay for the rest. There's more coming. When I was 14, I thought I was stealthy. My sister was supposed to be home that night, but she bailed at the last minute and left me on my own. Pizza in the oven, a friend over on the couch, the whole house humming like a living thing. It was late. The kind of late that makes sounds stretch and exaggerate. A branch on the roof becomes a prowling animal, a fridge sigh is suddenly an ominous groan. I remember settling in and hearing a tapping at the back of the house, soft at first, like someone testing a window. The sound moved, slow and intent, tracing along the siding down toward the basement, and then it stopped. I lived with my mom and dad and an older sister who claimed she would have handled anything. I felt small with the door shut, the streetlight slicing across the carpet in pale strips. The tapping returned, this time a little louder and moving under the window. It was as if someone had decided to examine every inch of the house for weakness. I took my phone, and because movies had taught me that light could be a little sword, I cracked the basement door and shone the flashlight through the gap. The phone rested against the jamb, a weak beam showing only a slice of the basement window. I filmed what I saw because I thought proof would be control. I told myself I was being silly, that if I had a recording, I could show my sister or the cops and laugh about how jumpy I was. The screen caught something that made my stomach hit the floor, a silhouette against the glass, not outside, pressed to the outside pane, but on the inside, standing still like a mannequin. The light from my phone painted the outline. I could make out the shoulders and the way the head was angled. It looked like someone peering out, as if they expected something to be there. I backed away slowly, then pounded on the door with both fists and shouted until my voice hoarse. The sound from inside was just a hollow silence. I could hear nothing else. No boxes shifted, no whisper of movement, like the air itself was holding its breath. My parents called the police. They came and searched the yard. They checked the foundations. They swept flashlights across the bushes. They knocked on neighboring doors. They found nothing conclusive. Later, my dad went down for a look and noticed that the big butcher knife that we kept in a basement drawer for camping and the occasionally stubborn roast was gone. It was missing. He swore that when he had made the last grocery run, the drawer had been full. I stared at that empty space with a new kind of fear that slides through you like ice. If somebody had been inside our basement, what had they wanted? Why take the knife and leave everything else? The police said they would keep an eye on the neighborhood, that they'd patrol more often. They took my video, asked a few questions, and the clip circulated among officers like something you don't quite know what to do with. A piece of evidence that raises more questions than answers. The file showed the figure pressed to the glass, still as if waiting for me to look away. I replayed it until the pixels blurred. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of angles, an animal that happened to be inside, something explainable if I just watched close enough. But I also remember the way my hands shook after I locked every door, how I slept with the hallway light on, and how months later I still peered at basement windows in the dark, like they might be watching back. I don't know if whoever was in that basement ever tried the back door. I don't know if anybody saw them go. The footage exists for me the way a scar exists. It is both proof and a promise that something unsolved happened that night. and that someone was able to stand inside our home and leave without a trace but for an empty knife drawer. When I was 16, I had a girl over. Her name was Malene, and she smelled like citrus and nerves. We were being those awkward teenagers who think charm is found in failing at coolness. My parents were out, and we had the house to ourselves, which felt like a private island, until you remember that islands can still sink. There was a single-car garage attached to the house, and Rocky the cat had decided, for reasons only he understands, that the basement was his kingdom. He liked the hum of the boiler and the way the concrete stayed cool under his paws. We were in the kitchen, and I heard a rustle from down below. Boxes nudged, things shuffled. The whispered thump that means someone is moving something heavy without care. I assumed it was Rocky. Cats make noise. End of story. My assumption turned out to be convenient denial. The rustling continued, then turned into the slow, deliberate sound of someone adjusting things in a storage room. Feet on concrete, the scrape of cardboard against drywall. I told Malene not to move, that I'd check. I went to the basement door and cracked it open just a hair, watching the dark for anything obvious. The heat from the kitchen seemed to stop at the threshold, and the basement held onto a different kind of air, cool, a little damp, thick with the smell of oil and dust. I flicked the light and saw nothing at first. Rocky was nowhere in sight. Then the cat started to scratch at the door upstairs, an urgent, frantic scratching like he wanted out, and then, just as suddenly, the scratching stopped. The sound from the basement that I had been assuming belonged to Rocky kept going on, like someone had been pretending to be the cat, and I had been too stupid to notice. Malene and I stared at each other for a second that stretched long enough for the world to sour. Then, as if the basement had decided to announce itself in the cruelest possible way, a foam football rolled out from the gloom and landed at the foot of the stairs. It was a tiny thing, almost laughable, and then utterly not. The football had been in a crate behind several boxes. I had watched that crate the entire afternoon. I had watched it the way people watch doors. It should not have moved. Yet there it was, wobbling in the basin of the stairs, as if someone had nudged it out to see if anyone was paying attention. For a second we both stared at that ball, like a riddle. Who had been moving our boxes? Who had been inside that side of the house? We called the police, and they searched the garage, walked the perimeter, checked the back alley. They found no footprints, no pry marks on the garage door, and no sign that someone had exited through the garage. I stood there insisting to myself more than anyone else that I had watched that side of the house the whole night. There was no way anyone could have left without being seen. But people can move in ways that don't follow your mental choreography. Someone can wedge themselves under the shadow of a hedge, slip along a fence, a person becomes a rumor, and then is gone. The thing that haunted me after that was not just the possibility someone had been in a room I thought I knew. It was the tiny theatricality of the foam football. It was almost like a message, a small hand reaching out from the dark to say, "I was here." Malene and I tried to laugh it off, to invent an explanation that didn't make us feel tiny and watched. But later that night, I lay awake listening for the padding of a shoe on the kitchen tiles. Rocky slept on the window ledge and twitched his paws in dreams. The police never found anyone, and my memory keeps circling that silly foam ball like a sign I can't decode. The earliest one is the one that still hollows me out. I was maybe 9, maybe 10, the kind of age where courage and foolishness are hard to tell apart. We had a PlayStation and a game called Driver 2, and I thought I was a daredevil because I could coax cars down a pixelated highway. The basement then felt like an adult place. It was where the TV was older, where the boiler's constant breathing made you feel like you were inside a living thing. I remember being late, the TV glow like a small sun against the cinder-block wall. The house was supposed to be my sanctuary. Then I heard a groan from the laundry room that sounded exactly like my mom. The groan wasn't right. It had the cadence of someone imitating a tired human, but there was this wrong underside to it, like a record skipping and playing a note that didn't belong. I paused the game and called out, "Mom, you okay?" Silence answered, and that silence had weight. I told myself the sound had come from the pipes or that my ears were playing a trick. And then I saw movement at the edge of the doorway, a figure in the laundry room, half hidden by hanging clothes and boxes, the outline of a person breathing slow. I screamed. That was my reaction, the kind of scream kids have when they discover something monstrous under their bed. My parents came rushing, and before I could fully explain what I'd seen, my father scooped me up, and my mother laughed in a voice that tried and failed to sound light. "It was just a friend messing around," she said. "We were joking. Don't make it a thing." I believed them for a while, because what choice did I have? Adults have authority in your life and the power to shape how you remember things. If they said a man in the laundry room was a prank, a 12-year-old is easier to convince than a memory. Years later, after I had the distance to piece things together, I asked more questions. I discovered an aunt named Debbie, a woman who existed in the family's past in sharp, heavy fragments. She had lived what people in my family described in hushed tones as an unstable life. She was dead. She had been unwell. The stories my parents told were different versions of soft shutting doors. "We don't talk about that. You were little. You didn't remember." It was nothing. Adun, that is the kind of answer that breeds its own fear. If the figure in the laundry room had been a living human hand reaching into our house, who was she to my family? Why did they fold the whole thing into a joke and shove it into a corner labeled "Don't"? The aftertaste of that evening was not only the fear of a stranger in the basement, but the slow, creeping sense that family stories can be edited. The door to the laundry room, the creak of the floorboard near the boiler, the smell of that hot, damp air. Those details became like relics, small things that referenced a bigger, unsaid narrative. I thought about the way families sometimes rewrite reality to protect themselves from shame or pain, and I wondered what else could be simplified or erased. The existence of Debbie, the way adults shuffled facts like cards to make a tidy hand, taught me that home could hold secrets that outlast the lives of the people who try to tidy them away. All four of these stories have a couple of things in common. They start in the ordinary: light switches, laundry baskets, teenage awkwardness. They escalate with small auditory cues, a tapping, a rustle, a groan, that make you question your first instinct. They reach a point where the narrator experiences something undeniably close: a silhouette at a window, a hand at an ankle, a foam football rolling from the dark, a figure in a laundry room. And they end the way most real-life scares do, with police who search and leave without firm answers, with family members who downplay or redirect, with a feeling that something that should be private was violated. What stays with me most is the unresolved quality: a forced window, a missing knife, a foam ball as signal, a buried family history. None of these incidents tie up with a neat explanation. That ambiguity is the thing that keeps a mind replaying details at 3 a.m., pointing at cracks in memory and saying, "What if?" The basement is a natural place for that ambiguity because it sits under the house where it can be out of sight. It is both connected to the home and apart from it, close enough to hear, but far enough to hide. For all the locks and alarms we imagine will save us, the basement holds this older, quieter vulnerability. You might ask what I learned, what any of us learned from these nights. There isn't a tidy lesson. You learn that the ordinary can be precarious. You learn that proof does not always lead to justice. You learn that families sometimes choose silence over answers, and that those silences echo. You learn how quickly your sense of safety can be replaced by a tape loop of small details you try to fixate on to feel in control. Mostly, you learn that unresolved fear has a way of becoming part of the furniture. something you notice when you reach for light switches or when you find yourself checking that the basement window is closed twice before bed. Sometimes I'll stand near a basement door and pay attention to the sounds, the low hum of the heater, the faint plumbing rattle, the settling of the house. It calms me and unsettles me at the same time because it reminds me how ordinary those spaces are and how easily ordinary becomes dangerous. The people in these 4 stories, the guy in my basement, the 14-year-old with his phone flashlight, the teenager with Malene and the rolling football, the child who later learned about Aunt Debbie, aren't brave in a cinematic way. They're regular people whose nights were interrupted and whose answers were partial. That partiality is the horror sometimes, the idea that the world contains things we can't fully see or name. I don't pretend to have a moral that fits in one neat sentence. I can only offer these recollections as they were felt, immediate, messy, and unfinished. If there's anything to hold on to, it's this. The details matter. The sound of a footstep, the way a window looks at a certain hour, the timing of a power cut, these small things are the breadcrumb trail of an experience you can't easily explain away. They are also the things that make you pay closer attention to your life, for better or worse. If one of these stories hits a chord with you, if you feel that same cold curl of recognition, subscribe for more true stories that will keep you up at night. There are more voices, more small horrors tucked into ordinary lives, and we'll keep unearthing them. For now, when you walk past your basement door tonight, take a second to feel the weight of the house beneath your feet. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. Either way, remember these 4 basements and the way ordinary rooms learn to hold danger. They're still haunting me, and if you're honest, they might haunt you too.